This film has been put together using first-hand accounts of those who worked for the Dunville family at Redburn House and their descendants and other Hollywood residents. It also uses unique film footage shot in 1966 by Colin Steele before Redburn House was demolished, and of the Dunville's kitchen garden in 2007, as well as a recent interview with Andy Moore. In addition, it draws on a wide range of photographs taken over the years by Colin Steele and by Patricia McKeaveney and Sam Christie and others. The main audio recordings are of Gordon Thompson, the son of land steward Tommy Thompson, and Patricia McKeaveney, daughter of the Dunville chauffeur Paddy Kelly. We are very grateful to all of them for permission to make this material available to the wider community, with funding from the National Lottery Community Heritage Fund. Members of the Dunville family originally lived in Richmond Lodge in Knocknagonie. Then Robert Grimshaw Dunville had Redburn House designed by the famous architectural firm of Lanyon and Lynn. The family's wealth came from their ownership of the Royal Irish Whisky Distillery on the Falls Road in Belfast, at one time the world's largest. They moved into Redburn House in 1866. It had 70 rooms. The adjacent stable block was added in 1879. The pleasure and kitchen gardens probably originated from this time, although they were extended in the Edwardian era before the First World War. The Dunvilles had so many horses. They also used the stable block at Merton Hall nearby. There were many indoor and outdoor staff to look after the family, the big house and the grounds. Robert Dunville's son John married Violet Lambart, who had grown up in Bow Park in County Meath. Violet shared John's passion for ballooning, and they set a number of aeronautical records. They had 4 children: Robert, John, William and Una. John was awarded the highest award for bravery, the Victoria Cross, after his death in fighting at Ypres in France in 1917. Robert, or Bobby as he was known, was seriously injured in an IRA ambush at Castle Bellingham in the Easter Rising in April 1916. He kept a range of exotic animals. The Dunville Whisky Distillery effectively ceased business in the 1930s. Violet was the last Dunville to live in Redburn, dying in 1940. The big house was then used by the military in the Second World War, first Americans and later WAFs. Holywood Urban District Council bought the house and the grounds, though Redburn House lay empty until it was demolished in 1972. British Petroleum had a staff club on the site of the house for some years, but the Holywood Care Home now occupies the footprint of the former house. The original stable yard of the big house is now the base for the Holywood Men's Shed. Behind the stable yard, work is in hand to restore the historic Dunville kitchen garden for the community. Redburn Country Park is managed by the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. It consists of 64 hectares and has many wonderful paths and views, as well as fascinating wildlife. A community guide to the park has been produced by Holywood Shared Town and is available free of charge with a QR code that links to the film. This film, the recordings and the photographs speak for themselves in telling the extraordinary story of the Dunville family and Redburn House in a way that no written accounts can. The film starts with the footage of Redburn House before it was demolished. We then hear descriptions of the Dunville family and its estate in its heyday.
What was life like on the estate? It was very different from the way of life people would have had out in Holywood.
It was different from being outside. It was like a little country of its own, with the royal family at the centre and all the servants around. Yeah, they'd been to London. They used to go to London in the winter, and when they returned to Redburn for the summer season.
There was one day as a schoolboy you were walking through the grounds and met
Colonel
right.
John coming up the back road, and what I dreaded, what we always dreaded, was running into them. But there was no escape. There was Colonel John and Violet and Mrs. John. And they stopped to talk to me, and you felt shriveled altogether. They seemed so high and mighty to you when I was only about 9 or 10 at the time. Anyway, she said, if you address my husband as Colonel Dunville, I'll give you £50. So of course I said, well, how do you do, Colonel Dunville? And she gave me the £50. If she touched you, the intense perfume hung in your hand for a long time afterwards. You could always tell when she was approaching. When I worked in the garden, she used to come out in the afternoons to walk around the garden. You could smell the expensive perfume long before she appeared.
She would have been known as Mrs. John to the staff, is that
Always
right?
Mrs. John, yes.
She must have been a terrific personality, because she was a very adventurous woman. She went ballooning and she did all sorts of things that women didn't really do.
That's right, yeah. She was a very vivacious, terrific personality. She wore a black beauty spot on her cheek, sort of a left over from Georgian times. She got a bit crippled in the end with rheumatism, I suppose, and she had a broom that she was supposed to be sweeping the greenhouse with. She did like to use a broom instead of a crutch because a crutch looked too much as if she was disabled. So the chauffeur painted it red, white and blue. She used to come into the garden with that in the afternoon.
He was a very ugly looking man. And in the newspapers, if you go to the Linnenhall Library and go through all the newspapers, you'd see the cutting and it said it was the wedding, Beauty and the Beast. She was a very lovely person. My dad never travelled as a passenger. He was always up in the captain's quarters. They had travelled that many times and he was that well known.
I can remember coming home, we were all in the van, and Bobby said, I'll give you 5 minutes start and I'll race you back to Redburn. So Paddy and all of us in the van set off as fast as we could go, and I can remember tearing along at a terrific rate and looking back and seeing the silver bonnet of the Delage coming round the corner, gradually catching us up. We swept in the front drive, just inches in front of Bobby, and holding the centre of the avenue, he tooted his horn in the Delage and Paddy had to pull over, and he just swept past at the last minute up to the big house.
But Bobby was quite a character, wasn't he?
Oh, he was. There was another time they were coming back from, I suppose it was Celtic Park, the races, and my father and the groom and Sam Farrer and people like that in the car, and Bobby was driving. He had rather large feet, size 11 he took, and it jammed in the controls. He shot in through the stable yard gate and he had to keep going round and round like that, and he couldn't get his foot out, so he had to crash it into one of the stable doors in the end. Nobody was hurt.
Master Bobby always had Alsatians. And you saw the picture of the two of them.
Yes, yes.
But he was quite funny. He was always playing jokes. He turned out one day for golf and he had gutties on, knee socks with suspenders on them, shorts, a small short-sleeved shirt, his helmet, and his sword with a banana stuck on it. And that was him going to play golf. And he got the page boy to take his bike up and ride it around the table when he was having his dinner. He barely never said anything, but half a crown for your performance. And there was another occasion that they took a horse up the stairs. I know who rode it up, somebody did.
That's right, the IRA shooting, he never really recovered from that.
I've heard it said that he actually suffered quite a lot of pain.
I imagine he did. His lungs were very bad. That's what killed him really in the end. He was on a tour of South Africa. They went to Johannesburg, and it's high up, I believe, and the rarefied atmosphere just about finished him, and his heart failed there, and that's where he died.
Everyone was devastated with Bobby's death.
Of course they were, yes. It was a terrible shock. Just beyond their house was this thing called the Monty Spout. It was a horse trough, and a little spout came out of the back wall, and there was the most pure water. The people used to walk out from Belfast on a Sunday afternoon just to have a drink from that. It was such lovely water.
And that became a memorial to Bobby?
Yes, they affixed a plaque on that after he died.
A lot of talk about John Spencer, who had been killed in the First World War. Was he mentioned a lot or thought of a lot?
I didn't hear a lot about him. He was revered, of course, in memory, and there was a little bush in the Holywood cemetery that came from his grave in the south of France. And we didn't see much of William either. He was a bit of a tear-about. In fact, he got so much a liability in the end. He was more or less banished to Canada and lived on an allowance there. He wrote to my father every Christmas. That was the only touch he had with Redburn. He was completely cut off apart from that.
And did you wouldn't ever have met Billy, I suppose, or?
No, he was away. He was sort of the outcast of the family because he married beneath the station. And that was very much frowned upon.
Very sad.
He was sent to Australia because they had a sheep farm right there. That's what the daughter was fed on. You know, the pure Jersey milk. It was too rich for her. It was something, she wasn't quite right. And I think she was in a home over in England.
Yes.
Because he used to go over and visit her.
They had extremely aristocratic tones, very intimidating. She always called my mother Mrs. Tommy, like that. And Bobby used to come to the walk below our house and shout, Tommy! Whenever he's wanted to go out in the boat or to go shooting or anything like that. Oh, they did have very aristocratic voices, no doubt. Mrs. John used to drive out every afternoon. Stanley Baldwin took her in the old yellow rolls with a black top. It was very ancient, lovely old car. She just went for a drive around the roads in the afternoon. And as they swept in the front drive, Stanley Baldwin, the chauffeur, used to give a good blast on the horn to alert everybody to be ready for her coming back.
And what was Mrs. Dunville like?
Lovely, lovely person. Christmas time she delivered her own Christmas gifts. Personally.
Right.
Because I remember I was supposed to be asleep on the sofa. And I remember her coming in and she was all dressed in black. And she remarked about me and what I was wearing.
So, Andy Moore, you're a former chairman of the Holywood Men's Shed. You're very well informed about what's going on here at Redburn House, and that's because your grandfather was the head gardener, I think.
Yes, he was. He was the head gardener of the garden behind us here. But that's down at the yacht club, so it is.
And your granddad's the tall fella on the...
He's a tall fella with a dicky bow and the moustache and the hat, the bowler hat.
And they had a house which you were brought up in on the estate?
Yes, it was what they call the laundry house. There was two houses. We lived in the first one on the left, and then the other family they worked in the laundry, so they got the second house. So they used to do all Dunville's laundry, and my mum and my aunt they worked in it too, so they did, you know. I was born and reared in the house, in the laundry house, so it was, and it was a great place. Down in the field, John's field, behind the house was the well where I had to go and we used to go and get the water from the well. We had no electric, we had oil lamps, helium lamps and candles we had to use. The dairy, part of the dairy is still here. It's grown over. We have found it and we tend to clean it up a bit and see if we can refurbish it.
There was a big staff in the estate.
Yes, there was. There was the head gardener and a couple of under gardeners, and my father became land steward when the previous land steward died, and he had about, I suppose, 12 or 15 men under him. There was carters and yard men and ordinary estate workers. And of course then there was the 2 chauffeurs, and in the big house they had a butler and a couple of, there was 2 butlers at one time, and a couple of footmen and a hall boy, head housemaid, and 3 or 4 housemaids under her, and a kitchen maid, a cook, head cook, with kitchen maids and scullery maids, and the hall boy as well. We knew a fellow called Harry the hall boy.
Tell me about the dairy and all that.
It was a proper dairy, all done out in marble inside, and Matilda Fraser, every Tuesday she used to do churning in there. It was a hand churn at first, and then when they got electricity put in there, they had an electric one. They used to do all the butter for the big house, and there was always buttermilk left over, which my father would have a can, and the head gardener would have a can. It was good for bread making, it was nice to drink. The milk used to come up from the farmyard. Alec Fraser, her husband, drove the old Maggie, the donkey, and the cart. They delivered the milk there. When the gardener, when Alec Fraser was bringing the urns into the dairy, the old donkey used to come down to the pot and shed door, where the men were all in there early in the morning smoking their pipes. It came down for a breath of tobacco. They would smoke their pipes and blow tobacco into the nose of the ass. It loved it. It really became addicted. So that every day when Alec was bringing the milk into the dairy, the old ass came on its own, put its head in the door for its smoke.
And your father?
Was the chauffeur for Lady Dunville and Master Bobby, mainly Master Bobby.
Brilliant. And he was Paddy Kelly, was he?
He was Paddy Kelly. We moved up. I was born in the house at, where would you say that is?
You called it down the hollow, didn't you? But
yes, down in the hollow. And we were moved from the Garnable Road up to that house because Bobby wanted my father nearer, more accessible. And he spent all his time up here doing all sorts of things. If he wasn't driving, he was doing something else. But he knew all there was to be doing.
Going back to the beginning, you tell me he started working for the Dunvilles when he was, what, just 17?
He was only 17. He was doing his apprenticeship in Robes.
Uh-huh.
And they sent for
in the garage?
a release driver.
Right.
Because I think one of the other drivers had gone into the First World War. So they sent out for a driver, and they took a fancy to my dad, and they kept him. And I think he became the national treasure, more or less, because he did everything, and everybody, you know, he was everywhere.
And what was his father like, Tommy Thompson?
Tommy Thompson, rather droll. He was always nice with me.
Uh-huh.
But he had tripwires in the orchard.
Is that right?
And a shotgun.
Oh.
Anybody fell over, just set off the shotgun. But, I always knew where they were.
So you were able to bypass the tripwires?
I knew they were there, and I knew where to look. To my dad's wages were only £2 a week.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, gracious. Yes.
So we were in the house, didn't have to pay rent.
Right.
Anything we needed.
Huh.
You got your milk, you got your butter.
Right.
We grew our own vegetables.
All right. Yes.
Because we had enough garden to grow spuds that would last us a year.
Did you get to see inside the big house at all?
Occasionally, when I worked in the garden, we renewed plants inside. We didn't see a lot of the inside, but saw into the servants' hall, because at Christmas Dunville used to hold a party for all the estate children. So we had that in the servants' hall, which is quite a big room. We had tea and buns and cake and that, and a little present each. Yeah, it was all very grand. It's like any stately home. Long corridors, and I can remember the rows of bells that used to ring whenever they rang for any servant. But I don't remember a lot about it. It was beautifully draped curtains and all. But we didn't really have much to do in the big house itself.
Can you tell me about the conservatory?
There was fig trees on the outside, and when you went into the conservatory, there was a huge vine called datura over everything, and on the benches either side were ferns of all descriptions. And inside there was bougainvillea and passion flowers, that sort of thing. And at the end of the greenhouse, it led into the library. Mrs. John used to sit in there and then walk out through the conservatory. There was always a heavy scent of exotic flowers in there.
The conservatory now is practically the size of Crystal Palace in legend. It was big, but it wasn't impossibly big.
Oh no, it wasn't. It was just in two sections, and it ended up right against the library. It was double doors went into the library. It was part of the big house, really. And there was a small greenhouse beside that at the back of the scullery of the big house, and down below that was the stoke hole where they heated the water for the pipes in the greenhouses.
Did they have lots of guests? Was there a time of year where they'd have lots of guests? Because I can remember there were lots of rooms. It was almost like a reasonable sized hotel.
Yes, they would do. They had visitors occasionally, friends from London and other people around Northern Ireland. And the Lamberts, of course, they used to come up from Meath quite often. They had often had big parties there. There was an area in front of the hall door, sort of esplanade. They were, at night you could see all the cars drawn up there and people in their evening wear and lots of laughter and light beaming out of the front door. Sometimes we used to hide in the bushes and watch all the grand folk coming and going. They let rockets off as well.
You were saying the big house, Redburn House, was always called the big house?
Oh yeah, it was always just referred to as the big house. Right, they had another house up past the Garnerville Road on the old Holywood Road. They had a house up there, and I didn't know they had a house up there. And I think they had connections with Merton House, because our garden backed on to Merton, and the army were using it as an exercise ground. They dug trenches and things like that all over it.
There's a lot of stories going about the soldiers come back years ago. They were up in the forest and they were keeping the bear going, in which the bear got a hold of one and tore the clothes off him.
Tell me about the menagerie, the zoo, which the animals.
Yes, it wasn't a zoo really. You could call it a menagerie. It was all mostly in the stable yard, which is quite a big area. There was a leopard in cages, and they had wallabies in loose boxes, and there wasn't a lot of animals really. There were a couple of snakes in a glass case, and
monkey, and
they had a monkey, a lemur from Madagascar, I think it was. Softly Sweezels, that was called. It used to be free to swing about in the greenhouse. And
there was a bear, I believe.
oh yes, they had a bear. I know my father used to come up midday for his lunch, and sometimes the bear would come with him. He opened the gate for the bear, but the bear climbed over the gate rather than walk through it. And it was quite tame and friendly.
So, they had a lot of other animals. They had a zebra, and they had dingoes, and wallabies, and they had Don Sophony. He was a lemur.
And you've shown us some wonderful photographs of him.
He was there.
And they had dogs as well, you were saying?
They had dogs, the hounds for the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And they had their own pet dogs as well. Master Bobby always had Alsatians.
You were talking about the little stream that came down the hill. That
Oh
came
yes,
from
Rory's Glen. That rose back in the hill somewhere. It came down. There was laid out in paths through the wood above the stream, and little wooden bridges across at various points. It ended up in a place just known as the fish pond. It was quite a large pond, and there was a little rose garden beside it, and a couple of statues with couchant lions holding a shield. I expect that's all well gone now. And then the stream run on down past the two thatched cottages at the end, and in a culvert and away somewhere over towards Merton. There was herbaceous borders that run along under the back of the stable yard, and it was interlaced with walks in all directions, flower beds, and there was currants, gooseberries, raspberries, strawberries and that. Lots of rose beds. A central path ran through the garden, and there was pergolas with Clematis montana growing over them, two of those where the paths intersected them, and either side of that crazy paving path were rose beds all the way. The outside wall was brick with railing in between, and fruit trees, cordon and espalier fruit trees grew there. And at the very top there was a little summer house, a rustic summer house. And there was some apple trees in that as well. And then the other side, it was bounded by a high holly hedge and a gate through into the pleasure grounds where there was palm trees and a fountain.
The very top bank was red peonies.
Really?
The whole length.
Right.
Now in that corner, where's that gate? This gate.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the side gate?
Yes.
Right. There. All soft fruit.
All right.
And they had white raspberries.
Gracious, yes.
And you know, the ordinary conventional ones.
Yes, yes.
A big bush of gooseberries, you know, the dessert ones, big fat ones.
Yes.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
There.
And they would send the fruit to London sometimes, would they? Or just for
I
themselves?
wouldn't know.
No.
These were only just for the household.
Yes.
Just for the household,
Right.
as far as I know. And then the peonies were along the top. There was a wee path in front of them. There was a path around the middle.
Uh-huh.
And I think down there was our cut flowers for the house.
Right.
They had roses. And the roses had stripes going up the petals. They got them in France.
Is that right?
And they were, you know, they got rare things.
Yes.
Except with the craze. At that time, people were collecting plants.
Mm-hmm.
And the rhododendron at the front was white with black spots. And the tree beside it was a cutting out of her wedding bouquet, and it was I used to come into the garden, and when you came in from the side where the pond was the fountain. Up to your right was soft fruit, big fat gooseberries, big yellow ones like lanterns, and they were sweet. And they had white raspberries and the ordinary raspberries. And then along the very top row there was red peonies where the summer house used to be, because remember the summer house was there.
Right, that you remember the summer house?
I remember it now because Tom and I, the day we visited, it was there then.
Oh, brilliant.
Now that would have been in 56.
Right. And was that a sort of wooden structure?
It was a wooden one. And we walked around the garden, and when you came down the far side, it was mainly, there was an artichoke growing and vegetables and stuff like that.
One of the big artichokes with the globe artichoke?
Yeah, the ones that were, they're very tall.
I know, yes.
Like a big green flower. And if you came across the middle of the garden, I think there was archways, and there was cut flowers down near the, what would it have been? The lower side from the soft fruit. Would have been all roses and stuff like that. And some of the roses were pale pink with red stripes running from the core to the tip of the petal.
There were roses as
Yes.
well, and you found some of the labels?
Yes, we found 2 lovely rose bushes over at the corner at the far end. The wee plates with their names was there, so we have them and cleaned them up.
They used to produce their own electricity in an engine house beside the garage. Well, I can remember an enormous flywheel in there, and you could hear it throbbing away during the day. Paddy Kelly, the chauffeur, used to look after that.
Talking about stables, could you tell me about what was in the stables apart from the menagerie at Redburn House? Cars and...
Yes, there was a big balloon basket from the Banshee was in one of the compartments, and there was lots of old carriages, a Victoria and growlers and that sort of thing from the Edwardian times. And out in the yard itself was the servants' coach, a longish coach, like an old omnibus, horse-drawn omnibus that used to take the servants to church on a Sunday. And there was a loft over the stables, and the clock tower was there as well. And James Black and his daughter Maggie Black lived in one of the overhead apartments. James Black was a carter and retired and lived up there.
Other buildings, there was a lovely big garage with a big canopy that extended out the front.
There was, yes. They were called the Wash. They were always washing the cars there. And beside that was the engine house. But I remember the Banshee, the boat they had at Donaghadee. It was crewed by my father and the butler and the groom. They had to dress up in peaked hats with a white top and sort of naval double-breasted coats and white deck shoes. They were all dressed up as a crew, and whenever the fit took Bobby, he rounded them all up and off they went for a day's fishing at Donaghadee. My father used to bring home a great bucket full of mussels, winkles, skate, plaice, herrings. So we lived grand on fish for a while, very fresh fish.
Now, there's one mystery you can clear up for us, the colour of the famous Rolls Royce that Violet...
It was a creamy white. I asked my sister about it. I said, you said it was a banana colour and they put in yellow Rolls Royce. She says, I meant the inside of a banana.
And the car that Bobby would have had particularly, and your father would have driven with him, was the Isotta, was it? The Isotta Fraschini?
They saw that. My dad was sent over to get an aeroplane.
To London, was that?
Yeah. And he didn't want to fly because his brother told him all the things that he had experienced. Dad didn't like heights. He came back with the ISOTA. 2 old ladies had owned it, so it was in perfect condition. And it cost 2,000.
Is that right?
Not 2,000. £2,000, that's what he was given to take to buy the plane. And he came back with the ISOTA. And of course she was a treasure. But I remember the field down there is called the Big Fiddle.
Yes, yes.
It,
And what would have been in that field?
well, there was different crops in it, maybe for animal feeding, hay and
Yes,
stuff like that.
yes, yes. And they had cattle, did they? Jersey?
Or should they call Jersey cows?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the balloons, but I used to play in the basket.
Ah, is that right? Yes.
We had the basket down the house.
Really? That would be treasure if I could ever find the basket. Yeah. I don't know.
You won't. It's disintegrated.
Right.
Now they're doing the walls, they're refurbishing all the walls around the garden, and it's going to be nice when it's done.
And you were saying there are plans already to restore the gardens here?
Yes,
Put the railings and the...
They're doing the new railings, they're putting the posts up, and then they're putting, they've got new railings for them, so they have. So they're working away at that at the moment, and then hopefully we'll get the garden sorted out. They have fences up now at the moment, which is a pity, because it's a beautiful garden. There's different paths, there's busy paving paths, there's a lot of stuff which is still there. We've came across where the pergola was, there's white pebbles done like a star, and then there's more done like a shape of a moon, the white pebbles, which has been there for years.